Hello, Ava, and everyone in her class. Yeah, I'm Dolly, Dorothy Duncan, or Dr. Dorothy Duncan, and you guys have sent me some excellent questions about sustainable fisheries that I'd like to answer now. And this is my daughter, Jane. She's along for the ride. Okay, so let's get to the questions. The first question is, do fishermen fish within their quota? And if not, are they aware of the impact they're having on the ocean and fish populations? So this question is a very good question, but it depends which fishermen you're talking about, if they fish within their quota. Norwegian fishermen tend to fish within the quota because there is a very good management system in place where landings are counted and every fisherman is accounted for, and these type of things. Norway is a very small country, 4.7 million people. So these type of checks and balances are much easier to implement than in countries, for example, like maybe France or other EU countries where there's a lot more fishermen, a lot more fish, and these types of checks are not always done. I would say, again, most fishermen probably do understand the impact they're having on the ocean. A lot of fishermen have been in the business for decades, and they know that fish populations go up and down. However, I think the thing that's missing is them seeing themselves in a more global perspective. I think fishermen tend to have a good idea of what's going on around them, you know, as far as things going on in front of their nose, but you know, the fact that there is only one ocean and a lot of fish populations are interconnected, especially the highly migratory ones. This isn't always so easy for them to see. And this is where scientists can come in and help explain these type of things. Okay, number 2, apparently the Norwegian government subsidizes fishing. Why do they do this? That is because fishing is a very important part of the culture in Norway along the coast. I mean, in the U.S., in most countries, in the industrialized countries in the world, agricultural farming on land is heavily subsidized. That's why McDonald's hamburgers are so cheap in the U.S., because the government pays the farmers to make them cheap. So, that is why the Norwegian government subsidizes just like any government. They want to keep people in the business. It's not a hugely profitable business all the time. For some fishermen it is very profitable. For example, the pelagic fishermen in Norway is very profitable. But they want to keep the people in the business and to keep the culture on the coast. So that's basically why. Number 3, Norway is known to have banned all discards. Does this lead to surplus? If so, what do you do with the surplus? Well, that's a kind of hard question, but it would lead to surplus in the sense that you're not throwing away any. But Norwegian fishermen, they wouldn't bring more fish to land than they can sell, as a rule of thumb. So they would, if there was a surplus, it would simply stop fishing because it's very expensive to be on the water, to have your fishing boat in action. Okay, number 4. What are the rules for the Norwegian boats that fish abroad and foreign vessels which fish in Norwegian waters? Yeah, this is something that could potentially be looked up, but in general, Norwegian boats that fish abroad would be under certain treaties, international treaties that have been signed with Norway and the countries that own the waters. On the high seas are the part of the oceans that no one owns. There's international groups that kind of have best practice laws for what's going on on the high seas. For example, CALAMAR, which stands for the Commission for the Conservation of Antarctic Marine Living Resources. They have a set of rules that every member country will fish this quota. So the marine scientists determine how much fish there are in the sea, and then the International Commission divvies up the quota among the nations, and then Norway would be in charge of making sure that the Norwegian boats only fish that quota. And that would be the same for the foreign vessels that fish in Norwegian waters. There's not that many, just some Russian ones, basically. And some Danish, I think, vessels. The sun in your eyes, sweetheart? Okay, number 5. Does Norway have any super trawlers off the coast of Africa? Quick answer to this is no. Norwegian boats are only found where Norwegians have treaties with the nations. Number 6. What are the most people to deal with? You probably mean most difficult people to deal with, the fishermen or the politicians. The politicians tend to listen to the fishermen. I would say, I don't know, it just depends on who you're talking about, which politician and which fisherman. But I think both, when the scientists have a good tone and are backing up their statements with sound quality science, I think both groups of people are can be easy to talk to. Easy is relative, some more than others, but I think the scientists just have to do the good science, but also learn how to communicate very well. Scientists don't usually have courses in communication, unfortunately. So I think a lot of misunderstandings have come across there. Number 7, what do you propose for the EU Fisheries Commissioner to do to fight back against the political pressure from the fishermen? How are the fishermen reacting to the situation? I think I'd like to just talk a little bit about the first part of the question, which comes back to communication. Marine science is very uncertain, just like climate science is quite uncertain. But that doesn't mean that politicians shouldn't listen to the scientists. But I think there's a big job for scientists to communicate the uncertainty and say, yes, our science is uncertain, but that doesn't mean you can't take action on what we know is to be important. So I would go back to say that biologists should have also degrees in communication and showing how uncertain things are a part of life, and we have to make decisions under uncertain terms. And politicians should also kind of learn how to deal with those type of issues. Number 8, how much control does the mafia have on fishing in the Mediterranean? What role does it play in the industry? I mean, this is difficult for me to properly assess. Difficult for anyone to properly assess. So all I can report on, for my views, are basically that we know that the mafia does have an important role in the fishing industry in Southern Europe, mostly in the bluefin tuna industry. This is a highly migratory, very highly prized, very expensive stock fish that is not doing well at all. Therefore, the mafia kind of kicks in and controls the market more or less. So what role does it play in the industry? It plays a very important role, but a very, mafia hidden role. I can't really say so much more about that because I don't know. I mean, who does really know? But these are the type of things that politicians have to deal with, so their life isn't made any easier because of these issues. Now, if the stock was in better condition, the Atlantic bluefin tuna, it would be an easier situation. So that comes back to communication. How do we try to manage a fish that's not doing well, plus has, because the supply is low, the demand is high, and it comes back to a lot of economics. That's the thing about fisheries. It's not just biology. There's a lot of socioeconomics going on. Okay. Number 9. Does Norway fish a large quantity of whales for research? No. Norway doesn't fish whales for research, but they get some of the catch. Norway does fish whale for commercially. And a lot of people may have qualms about that, but actually the minke whales that Norway harvests, usually every year, is the most sustainable fishery that Norway has. Now that might sound a little bit funny, but the fact of the matter is that it's very easy to count whales. It's not easy to count fish. In that case, Norway has a very good idea very low uncertainty on how many whales there are and how they reproduce and how many there will be next year. So that is one of the prerequisites for sustainability, is good science. And it's much easier to do science on whales because they're so huge and you can actually see them and count them. Fish stocks are not like that. They're much smaller. You don't really have a very, very good idea of how many fish are there. It's very uncertain. I think Norway takes approximately 30 whales a year. It depends on the year. But the science is very good because they know how many whales there are and they know how they reproduce. And Norway controls that. This is the second part of the question. I mean, it's like managing a forest. You can count the trees, and so you know how they reproduce and how fast they grow, so you can take out a sustainable amount every year. That's how it is with whales. And that's why I say that whaling is the most sustainable fishery, because you have such good information and you know exactly how many you can take out and how many you need next year to reproduce. And fish stocks aren't like this because you only have a very vague idea of how many fish there are in the sea, if you have any idea at all. So it makes whales easier to manage and, in that case, more sustainable. Okay, I think those were all your questions. I hope this video turns out convenient for you guys. It's easier for me to do a video than to write all this down. And Jane says hi to everyone. Jane, can you open your eyes now? It's a little bit too sunny. One of the few sunny days in Bergen. But yeah, good luck, and don't hesitate to ask me any more questions if you need to. Great. Ciao.